Another way you can make a copy of your image and actually have it be of some use as you're adjusting is to go to the image menu and choose duplicate. I'm going to click OK. You can change the name if you'd like, but now you'll see I've got a copy of my original file. Now this copy isn't saved anywhere. Currently it's just floating, so this will be the one I work on, and then my original file will remain by itself. But we can actually see these side by side in Photoshop. If you go to Window and choose Arrange, you have a whole bunch of different arrangements. Let's choose the 2-up vertical, and this way we can see which one we're working on. Looks like my copy is on the left. I think I'm going to move that over. There we go. Now my copy is on the right. I move that just like I would any other panel. Let's introduce you to some adjustment layers, which are pretty cool. Previously, the adjustment we did affected the actual layer itself. We did make a copy of it, but it was still affecting the pixels. These adjustment layers are called non-destructive edits because they don't actually change the pixels, but they do change the overall appearance of the image. To show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to apply an adjustment layer. You can use your adjustment layer palette, or you can come down to the bottom of your layers panel and click on the circle button with the line through it in the middle, which will give you a list of all of your available adjustments. I like this better because then I don't have to guess what little picture represents which one. Let's go to levels so you can see one you're already familiar with. This is the exact same information that we used in the previous video, and you can see that even though it looks a little bit different window-wise, it does the same thing, and you can see it changing here on the one on the right. However, this tutorial is to teach you how to use a curves adjustment. So just like any other layer, you can get rid of an adjustment layer by pushing the trash button when it is selected. Let's add a curves adjustment. And this is also a histogram here in the background, and it has a lot of the same functions that levels does. I've got a white point, which I can drag in or out, and a black point. I can tell that this image can use maybe a tiny bit more contrast, or my darks be just a tiny bit darker, because here in the background the histogram is pretty much lacking information right over here in my darks. So I'm going to pull my dark point in just the tiniest little bit. Little tiny fixes are going to go a long ways in this one. We can brighten everything overall by simply grabbing the middle of this line and moving it around, and dragging it up just a tiny bit will help us brighten things up. So I have brought in my darks, but then we want to keep everything from going really dark by pulling this up just a tiny bit. The way you're going to get used to using one of these is to just play with it and see what lines do. At any point you want to see a real quick before and after beyond side to side, is actually just turn the layer on and off to see the difference. So I can see that it adds just that tiny little bit of pop, which is what I was looking for. You can correct for color cast as well. If I come here to my channel selector, just like in layers or in levels, I can choose the color that I feel it is cast to. I feel like this picture is a tiny bit red. So if you're not quite sure which way to go and can't remember what does what, just grab points and move things around just a little bit. So you can see this adds more red, this makes it more green, and I don't really want a green or a red, so I'm going to grab in the middle and pull it down just the tiniest bit. Just enough to take the red cast out, but not so much to give her a sickly green glow. And that did improve the green color of the clothing as well. When you're done with your layer, you can do like I did and just collapse the properties panel, which is this one here that looks like a little square on mine, by clicking on it. By adding a adjustment layer, you've now turned it into a file that has layers and needs to be saved as a Photoshop document if you ever want to come back. The great thing is you can come back. You can change this as often as you want. You don't actually have to find or reload your original because it's still here as the bottom layer. You can have multiple adjustment layers. You can try out a couple other ones to see what you think. Let's try an exposure one. Exposure is the amount of light that's hitting the camera, and this can mimic that quality. So there are some fun ones to play with, and you can add as many as you would like. And when you're done, you can save it as a Photoshop file with layers. You can flatten it and save it as a corrected JPEG, or you can do both. Save it as a Photoshop file with layers and then save a copy as a JPEG.